So I just want to welcome everyone to this live demonstration of brainwave mapping via the mind mirror. This is something that many of you have already heard me talking about. And some of you who don't know me yet, you'll find out that I'm a little bit of a neuroscience nerd, and I'm claiming that. So I am a medical doctor and acupuncturist, and several years ago, I had an out-of-body experience that completely blew my mind wide open. And finding out that many of us around the world have had kind of mystical experiences or experiences with knowing things before other people knew them, like being able to tune into energy or having psychic dreams. There are millions of us. Now, that may not be a surprise to you, but for me, when I was a kid, I had these precognitive dreams. I could feel energy. I could sense energy between people. But when I talked to my friends, they kind of thought I was a weirdo. And that's when I realized that not everybody has these abilities. And I literally turned them off for a while because I felt like, one, I was a weirdo. And two, some of like the precognitive dreams, they came, but not with enough time for me to do anything about them. So, for example, I remember at university, I got this vision of somebody I knew who was actually a celebrity, and somebody arrived at the house in this dream with this shotgun. And I remember waking up going, whoa, first of all, why was I dreaming about that celebrity? And how weird that there was this shotgun. And then later that morning, turned on the news, and that person had actually lost a cousin in a shooting. And I thought, well, God, why do I have this ability? I couldn't have done anything. Just having that dream didn't do me or that person any good. But in 2005, in the pits of a really dark depression, where I just was literally not wanting to go on with life and calling out to God for help, I got that help. And I left my body and had this out-of-body experience. And for anyone who's ever read anything or heard anything about NDEs, near-death experiences, I saw that white light. I felt myself being drawn into this light, went through this tunnel experience, and then saw my entire life flash in front of me, like in an instant. And through that experience, being met by a guide, understanding kind of my life and what I'm really on the planet to do, I saw a vision, and this vision of a future life, living in France with a child and doing certain things, healing with my hands. It struck me like, okay, that looks like a much better life than what I was living. And if you're saying I can choose that, then I will choose that. Because the understanding I got was we are little droplets of consciousness. We're light. We are the same thing as source, God, whatever you want to call that. For me, I called it oneness. And when I saw that we are that, and that when we incarnate, when we come to earth and take form, it's up to us to decide who we will be. And then this vision that showed me this beautiful future, I said, well, yeah, I'll take that. And when I got back into my body, the depression was gone. The anxiety was gone. And it hasn't come back since. And knowing that most people who have a history of depression for many years, I had never heard of a single person being cured in an instant, especially as a physician. I'd never seen that, never even heard of it. And that led me to do a lot of research in near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences. And it led me to find the work of several researchers. I won't go into them because we have enough to get into tonight, but it led me to understand that there are researchers that have shown that our brains are naturally wired for mystical experiences. So for these auditory, quote unquote, hallucinations, like hearing voices, seeing things, seeing auras, going into that tunnel, having a life review, all of these have been documented. And that like blew my mind. And the other key to that was you didn't have to have an accident or be, under anesthesia or flatlined in a coma to have some of these experiences. So a couple of years ago, I was introduced to a book because I started really like wanting to know, how can I control my own superpowers? Like, how can I heighten my intuition and my healing abilities? And I stumbled across the work of C. Maxwell Cade. And I'm going to share a little bit more, and Judith is actually going to share more about Max Cade tonight. It was reading about Max's work with psychics and healers and yogis and meditation masters that really opened me up to this concept that, oh, wow, people are actually studying this. And people are being trained to get into these higher states of consciousness. And that has always fascinated me, because I've often dreamt of being able to go to like a superhero training university where all of us could like learn how to enhance our superpowers and do it with, you know, consciousness and grounding. And then I happened to be at an event where I met this lovely American who lives in France named Joel. And he said, yeah, gosh, your ideas are fascinating. You should really talk to the Institute for the Awakened Mind. And I thought, well, I love the name. I've never heard of the Institute. Who runs it? Judith Pennington. And I'm like, wait a minute, same last name? We're both into this consciousness stuff? And lo and behold, I connected with Judith Pennington and found out that, yes, this institute exists and she's doing amazing, amazing work, and actually trained with Anna Weiss, who brought C. Maxwell Cade's work over to the US. So I'm going to introduce Judith so that she can share a little bit more about this fascinating field that I'm now a part of. Because last year, in November, for my birthday, I treated myself to a week of training with Judith and with Arne in Pennsylvania to get insight into how to use this mind mirror, which she'll tell us about and she'll demonstrate, and how these meditations can actually lead us into deep states of meditation for healing, for creativity and intuition, how we can even use meditation to get into expanded states of consciousness and that state of oneness that I experienced through that out-of-body experience, and how we could even use meditation to go even further beyond, which we'll get into tonight. So I know that may sound a little fantastical. I mean, I know most of the names here. I know there are a few of you that I have not yet met, but I think most of you here are like, yep, we've known this, we've felt this, and now to be able to have some tangible data or proof that you can enhance your superpowers must be exciting to you as well. So tonight we're going to be allowing Judith to give us a sample of what it looks like to have your brain waves measured as you're going through meditative processes. And then we'll also have my new friend and future collaborator, Arne Heissel, who is going to share his experience as a healer and as a new practitioner, who will also be using the Mind Mirror software. And we're going to partner up and do things around the world. But first, I'll start off with you, Judith. Judith Pennington is the founder of the Institute for the Awakened Mind, and she is the director of Awakened Mind Enterprises. She is an internationally published journalist, author, and she is one of the world authorities on EEG. Like, how cool is that? As I mentioned, Judith has trained with Anna Weiss, and she is the successor, who was the successor to the Mind Mirror inventor, C. Maxwell Cade. And Judith also assisted Anna in seminars at Esalen, and then started doing practitioner training. And Judith has published many books, which I will share with you via email when we send out the replay. And I think you're going to love this, because Judith brings a very practical, down-to-earth nature to all of this. But she herself has had her own experiences with getting what I call downloads, where she's been able to do channeled writings that are just fascinating. So I know that you will also probably want to ask questions of Judith and Arne. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to turn over the mic to you, Judith, so that you can lead us into a little bit of the history behind the Mind Mirror and how you got introduced to Anna in the first place. And then you can take it from there.
Well, thank you very much, Andrea, and hello, Arne, and hello, everybody. It's so nice to meet with all of you here through cyberspace. as you just said, Andrea, certainly it was a similar spiritual awakening that got me involved in this work, experience of cosmic consciousness back when I was 22 years old. And I think I'd always been interested in the brain and consciousness, but was a writer, a journalist, and a singer, and certainly had moments of revelation, as we all do, peak moments, a sense that there's something more than. But until I had that experience, driving down the interstate in an old Carmen Ghia, and I sent up a prayer and ended up being blasted with this exploding light, and getting, as you said, a download of what life is really about, and that I knew that there was something more than. And I ended up doing meditative writing many years later, having gotten absolutely no answers, but still knowing that there was something more than. And through that, learned meditation and ended up writing my first book, which at the end of writing the narration, I thought, I am not going to publish this book unless I have some proof of what I'm saying. I need some objective proof. And within 2 days, I kept hearing this inner prompting that said, go to the ARE bookstore, the Edgar Cayce bookstore in Virginia Beach, where I was writing my book, and look for Common Boundary magazine. Well, I knew I didn't make that up, because although I had written for Common Boundary, you couldn't find that magazine just anywhere. So I did, and on the cover was an article, an interview that said the Brainwaves of Healing. And I knew that that was it, and read this interview of Anna Wise and went, I was driving I had driven down from Virginia Beach to my house and was on the way to a hotel. And I got into the hotel and started reading this article. And I wasn't 4 paragraphs into it. And I just threw the magazine up in the air and went, that's it. That's exactly the proof that I can understand and anybody can understand. And it's not just me. I didn't want to say it was just me that was awakening to higher consciousness through meditation. And then once I had Anna's and Max's before her understanding of brainwaves and this objective path and language that I could use to teach other people who, like me, were skeptics, or everyone's a skeptic to some extent, aren't we? Show me. Once I had that language in the meditation structures, it's just been this wonderful ride where everything Andrea said and what I just said, and no doubt what you too have experienced, is quantifiable. It's measurable. You can see on the mind mirror I'm going to show you, the moment someone had their aha, you can see the moment they connected with their spirit and had a spiritual illumination. Because I like to say that the mind mirror is like a hologram. Someday I have to write a book on that or paper or something, because it's hard for people to get their minds around. But if you can believe that we have a template, that there is an energy that is transcendent to and existent on a non-physical level, and that this physicality is a mathematical subset of that template, a manifestation of that template, then you can take it a little further and say, oh, well, so then the body must have a fractal-like holographic representation. And then you look at the brain and go, oh, so everything that's happening in the body and everything that's happening in consciousness in exchange with other people, our spirit, everything that happens to us is represented in the brain. And all of that shows up on the mind mirror. And that's why the thing works so well. It's absolutely a hologram, a holograph of your inner experience. So let me just share the screen with you and explain what I mean by that, because then it's going to make a lot more sense. You'll be able to, as we all do, relate it. So what I have here, you can all see it, I take it. If you'll nod, then I'll know. Okay, great. So this is a one-person session This actually is someone who's very close to me. I can put the mind mirror in action, and you can see that it's a real-time depiction of changes in the brain waves, and I'll explain them in a minute, and changes in consciousness, because a change in your brain waves, your frequencies and the amplitude, we look at frequencies from the top to the bottom, 0.5 hertz or cycles per second, super, super slow thinking, slow waves, actually sleep, deep dreamless sleep, all the way up to the conscious mind up here, much faster frequencies. And then we're looking at also the amplitude. And so when Max Cade invented the mind mirror and consequently did 4,000 sessions on highly developed and spiritually conscious people, he realized that there is a brainwave pattern for those people. And I'll just show you what it is. Shape of it is like this. This is actually an advanced awakened mind. And this person that I'm measuring right now is getting grayed out because he has too much activity in other frequencies, but just to show you the basic pattern. And so Max was measuring yogis, swamis, Tibetan lamas, people who are at the peak of their creative projects and endeavors and careers, as well as advanced meditators. And what he found was the same pattern in people who had their eyes closed, this shape right here. And we have carried this forth, and it still holds 50 years ago today. And what it says is that the mind is in orchestration or communion with itself. So to explain about these frequencies, back in Max's day, this is all they were looking at was some low frequency brain waves. And it was really kind of a miracle that they had that even then, because back in the 1970s, of course, you had transistors that were coming into being for the first time. And what he invented was a dual hemisphere pattern. So you're looking at the left brain here and the right brain here in a composite of 4 brainwave categories: beta, and I'll explain them, alpha, theta, and delta. And so nothing like that existed then, and still today, nothing like this exists. No other of the many brainwave manufacturing, monitoring companies like NeuroSky, Emotive, none of them are doing this. And Max realized, to his incredible credit, of course, he was a biophysicist, a psychobiologist, on all of the boards of all the royal societies in England for science, a Zen master, meditation master, a keto practitioner. He had this incredible span from scientist to mystic. And what he realizes is that the story of someone's experience was going to be in their interrelationships between the frequency bars, these bars here, and the interrelationships between the categories of beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So over the past nearly 50 years, we have this incredible database that tells us what's happening. So let me just go through this quickly, and then as I show you some live brainwaves and relate the person's experience to the patterns, you'll be able to pick it up. So up here at the top is beta. Beta is the conscious mind of active external thinking. So you're using your beta right now to grasp what I'm saying, because as the conscious intellectual mind, this is the ego's domain of analysis, thought, and reason. Now, you know what happens yourself when you start to overanalyze, or the ego gets in control, or you have so many windows in your consciousness or on your computer screen open that you start to get overwhelmed. Well, what's happening in your brainwaves when you have that feeling is that rather than be rounded, like you see this beta here, that beta is having a high amplitude and high frequencies. And sooner or later, those thoughts are going to collide. The brain will overwhelm and shut down. So what we do as Awakened Mind trainers, first of all, is teach people to focus on their breathing, and something others don't do, become aware of, excuse me, an environment of some sort, like a setting in the woods or something like that. And what that immediately does is kicks in your sensory awareness down here in this green alpha. So alpha is lower frequencies, and it relates really to nature. All of these frequencies right here, from 7.5 to 14 hertz, are in the domain of nature. So if you go out into nature and you notice the texture of a leaf, the sound of the wind blowing, the music of the leaves, anything that has to do with your inner or outer senses is going to activate alpha, and it's going to decrease beta, so that the concentration of the amplitude in beta is out of the high frequencies and down in the low frequencies where alpha can be present. We are super concerned about alpha because alpha is the bridge to your subconscious mind down here in this blue theta. Theta is the home of your long-term memories and everything contained in them, all of your thought patterns, your conditioned behaviors, every single thing in this life that's happened. And hypnosis people would certainly make a case that in past lives, everything's stored down here in theta. Because this is your personal subconscious, then it is also partly because of the connection with your memories, but partly because this is the home of your memory-laden essential being. This is the home of your creativity and your insight and your spiritual awareness. So you can immediately see that people who are stressed out and in high beta without any alpha bridge are not going to be in touch with themselves. A lack of alpha is a source of self-separation. Does that make sense? Yeah, so this is why all good meditations, awakened mind meditations, and anybody else's meditations, they have to start with relaxation to get this alpha bridge. They don't know that, other people don't know that this is why it works. We do, and it's because you've then got the alpha bridge down to the material of the mind. So this is where people do their healing work. Max, as a master hypnotist, certainly knew. He used this real fast hypnosis. Follow the path that bends 45 degrees to the right. You know, today we would say, you see a path and follow it, and give people more time to what we call sensualize with any of their senses. They don't have to be visual. It could be an inner sense of knowing or feeling. They would sensualize their experience and thus be able to be in contact with the truth of who they are. And then down here, of course, close to your spiritual connection, close to your essential being, is your connection with the field down here in your delta radar. I always think it's really funny that Max made real inroads into the field of radar for the British government. And so he realized that this delta, it's a kind of radar. It's your field awareness. This is the low, slow brainwave category and frequencies that make you aware when someone who is a danger to you has just walked into the room. This delta, and now plenty of studies are coming out and saying very clearly that this delta is processing information so much faster than the conscious mind, it's ridiculous. Because that's what it is. It's slow waves, and because it doesn't have any interference or impedance from the thinking mind, it's picking up everything that is around you. And in fact, this delta, which connected with the field, is where you see psychics operating. It also, healers will be amplifying delta waves. And when people reach out with this searching, anticipating delta, and connect with someone or something else, or the field itself, or their spirit, and they make that connection, then you will see this delta do what it's going to do in this session in just a few moments. For this man right here, the delta begins to turn up because the information from the field or from his own personal unconscious mind is flowing upward into the higher frequencies. Once it flows out of low delta, the formless, and it goes through theta, the inner knowing, it rides right on up into alpha, into visual imagery, and then right on up into beta, where it becomes able to be articulated into words. So this person in this session, and I'll just move forward one little second at a time, at the 15-minute point, is definitely in connection with his deeper being. I have his drawings right here. He was trying to clear the block. He wanted to be able to throw himself into working on mathematical research and to problems that he didn't know the answer to. And he wanted to do that with his whole heart, mind, body, and soul. But there was something stopping him, and he didn't know what it was. He would go and work on this association work, or teach in classes, or, you know, work on a little paper here, but he wanted to do the big work. So what he went through in this meditation was just a slow dive. Focus on your breathing, withdraw from the outside environment, create an environment. And I think he went to the woods here. Yep, that's what he did. In fact, he went to the woods in Germany, which is where he goes and does his sabbaticals, where he collaborates with other mathematicians. And at this point, he has already come in touch with a light. Literally, he found a hard light bulb, and that was going to be his. He saw a roadblock, and then beside the roadblock there was a light bulb. So he realized that he was going to have the answers. And at this point in the session, he is very connected with spirit in what we call the evolved mind pattern. So what happens in consciousness, and this is exactly what Andrea was saying, and I was saying too, is when you release, when you have a really low frequency alpha down here at 9 hertz, and you're very much in touch with your subconscious essential being, and you're pulling up information from the field at the same time, then the self-separation that exists when you have a conscious mind, a subconscious, and an unconscious mind, that starts to disappear. Then there's no difference between subject and object. There's no duality. So he's moving into a state of non-duality. And we can probably find a really nice circle because he had a lot of them. You can see the circularity of the pattern as these brainwaves are starting to merge, especially right here, this whole bottom of an evolved mind pattern, which is a perfect circle. So this actually is moving toward the pattern of spiritual illumination. He's not there yet, because over here you can see that there is what we call the Lesch scale. This is a measurement of his galvanic skin response. That is his sweat gland activity below his hands. You put these on 2 fingers. And also, his heart rate is very low, but not the lowest it's going to get later on in this session. So he's part of the way toward connection with his deeper self, but he's not all the way there yet. Although he will get there later on in the session, as he begins to realize that there's really nothing at all in his way. The only thing in his way, of course, as for all of us, is the fear of failure. Later on in the session, he starts to activate his gamma waves, and you can really see that he's got some amplitude up here in the 49 hertz and the 59 hertz, though not very much in what we call upper gamma here. We do see people, especially in studies at the Monroe Institute. I don't know how many of you know about them, but they are frontiers in the exploration of consciousness through initially the development back at Max Cade's time of binaural beats. And what they do is we go, and Mind Mirror monitors go twice a year and monitor 20 people who are lying in these anti-gravity chairs with headphones on, and they're listening to these gamma beats that excite these higher frequencies, which is where they are able to do, actually remote viewing is in lower frequencies. That's just psychic perception. But out-of-body travel often does involve higher frequencies. And so what happens is that I've actually seen a 100 hertz evolved mind pattern, which is not just non-duality or unity consciousness. This is total merging with the field. And so this mathematician here, there he goes. This is one of the coolest things we've learned through the past 3 years in doing these twice yearly programs with the Monroe Institute, is that when you have an excitation of these high frequency gamma waves, which are actually creating coherence from front to back and side to side in your brain, then it is triggering this beautiful evolved mind pattern you see right here. And what this subject, or I can't call him a client, he's too close to me to be a client, he realized that he had set a very high standard for himself, and it was hard to accept a lower standard. And I asked him, could you wait and see what would happen to you as you did this research without judging? And this is just about 10 minutes after he has started to recognize that he actually could do that. Nothing was stopping him from that. And he subsequently, let's see, I have several sessions here with him. Let me find the third page of this one. And needless to say, is a different person and is working on a phenomenal theorem right now he's extremely excited about. So this is 39 minutes. What's he doing? He's meditating on the difference between evaluating and judging. And he is, if I can read my writing, he's realizing that the part doesn't want to let him off the hook, that it has always been there. He can't remember not having the self-judging, high standards, accusational part of himself. He wishes he didn't have it, but right here at this very moment, we happen to have landed on, he realized that his only fealty is to his soul. The only real thing that matters for him in this life, in this moment, is his fealty to his soul. And so he came out of that meditation, as does every client, having taken a deep dive into the essential being. And if they are able to really, you can see that he's got super, super stable brainwaves. Well, he's a mathematician. He works with objects in space, so his concentrative powers are enormous. And look how stable this pattern is. For most people who are non-meditators, these patterns are jumping all over the place. They're moving into high beta. They're losing their alpha. So in a nutshell, what we do as mind mirror practitioners is learn about the patterns of consciousness and what these brainwave states mean, and how to help people shift their brainwave states so they can move into higher and more expanded states of consciousness. Now, I said a minute ago that I have to catch myself. See this Lesh state says 3.1? Well, that's happening because his gamma is getting excited now. He's working with the part. He's still doing that. That can cause some excitation. But also, he's got some gamma brainwaves going. So, so we just teach people how to access their own inner wisdom so that they can contact and clear obstacles and become more peaceful inside, so that at some point they can maintain their alpha in a waking state and move their meditative consciousness out from, it's pretty easy if you're a creative person to have an awakened mind pattern to some extent with your eyes closed. The real test is, can you move it out into the waking life, maintain your relaxed, diffused alpha, maintain your connection with your own deeper self and your connection with the field, and bring all of that into conscious awareness, thus evolving the ego so that the ego's not running the show anymore. The super ego starts to run the show. So that was kind of a mouthful. Maybe now you guys would have some questions. Do you want me to keep sharing, or so we can answer questions with the screen share on, or
Well,
just...
has anyone got a question that you want to pop into the chat? That was a lot, but I'm grateful that you gave us the background and then this insight to see live what's happening. Who has a question that you'd like to ask Judith at this point before we introduce our next guest? So Shelley is asking, I wonder if this could be used to measure the efficacy of various therapies like essential oils or neuroplasticity exercises. And if so, would you want to evaluate the treatment after each session or after a period of time?
That's a terrific question. And I'm going to do a little marketing work here because I'd be stupid if I didn't. So not only would you measure that session by session, we have a new phenomenal subscription-based service that's coming online in 2 or 3, maybe 4 months, called the Mind Mirror Portal, so that it will uptake your sessions and produce for you beautiful data that you don't anymore have to go and get for yourself. Well, I'm going to pull up, no, I'm not. I'm going to double check and make sure I'm not being double crossed by a little glitch that needs to be fixed in here. There won't be any glitches once the portal is in business. So you can see the moment something happened without actually having to step through the mind mirror display like I just did, moment by moment. And the portal is going to do all the data analysis for people, and it's also going to keep track of trends. It's going to give you bubble charts. So if you're doing, and the biggest answer to your question is absolutely, people are checking the efficacy of hypnosis. Another person is going to be checking essential oils, actually. You can check anything here, because it's clear what you want to have happen. You want to have more alpha, you want to have more theta, you want to have the pattern stabilized, like we just saw a nice stable pattern there, but you also want to see if it's affecting your high frequency brain waves. Like here is the person's gamma that I just showed you. And you can see that at a certain point in this session, he moved from an opening of 1.25 hertz low gamma all the way up to almost 2.5. So he had a whole microvolt change in his gamma over the course of this session. And that's phenomenal because people tell you that they can feel 1/2 of a microvolt of gamma. So all of this stuff is going to be done for you automatically in the portal. You can actually check, their heart rate to see if the moment they put the essential oils on, there was a release and a relief in their heart rate. So he's got a very steady heart rate right here, and also a low heart rate. So we'll just change our data range so you can see it better. Probably 70 is high for him. Put a trend line on here. The portal is going to do all of this. We don't have to do anything anymore. So what you'd be looking for, the moment I put that essential oil on them, did they have a spike in heart rate? Did they feel it? Or did their heart rate decrease? And if it decreased right there when I put it on there, I'm going to click on this. It's going to tell me that that was at 50.51 minutes. I'll put a marker in here, and that marker is going to drag, I can go straight over to the brainwave pattern that's associated with that 51 minutes, and I can see whether they had an aha or higher state experience. I mean, there's so much that you can do with the mind mirror. You can, anything you want to know, you can see it in these windows. And now that we have the portal coming online, you'll be able to see changes over a period of time. If I were you, I would definitely look at the changes within the session, but I certainly want to look at changes over a period of time through the trends.
And Karen Joy is asking, could we use the mind mirror? Would it be useful for traumatic brain injuries or for cognitive impairment?
You know, it is. I don't have a session I can show you in here, but I can go on my browser to a website and show you a wonderful resource for the mind mirror. And if you want to look at this session, I can get you get you a free entry if there's a cost to it. So it is iamevents.tilda.ws and /videos. See that?
We don't see your screen.
Oh,
we're still seeing mind mirror.
All right, let me change. I'll have to stop sharing and then reshare. Let's see, new share. Oh, that's nice. Oh, so that's a nice new feature in Zoom. Okay, now can you see I am
Yes.
video gallery?
Yes.
Okay, so down here, if you want to see more about how the mind mirror works, actually, this is very fun. This is all the new practitioners. We trained 22 practitioners last year, including Andrea and Arne, and I'm so thrilled that more and more people are coming into this work. So this is actually how the mind mirror works. You can look at everything from how to download the software or just a demo of a self-guided meditation that I did. These are free, easy to get into, no problem at all. What I'm after showing you, and these are even free new user videos. So if you decide that you're interested in a mind mirror, you can explore around and see if it's really for you. What we do, and I'm so happy that Arne and Andrea are both going to do it, once people are certified, they themselves guide a case studies. Here it is. I don't know the cost of this or not. We'll find out. Yeah, there is. So it would cost you $7.50 to watch it, but if you send me an email, then I will get it for you free. So this woman, Suzanne Temple, I doubt very seriously I remember the name of how to get it in for free. So I'll just tell you about it. So Suzanne is a professional teacher of mediums based close to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Really switched on. She's training a lot of people in Europe. And we have always been, well, we were told by Anna Wise, who I learned from and was Max's successor, that we're consciousness trainers and educators. And that's all we work with. But this Susanna started getting, you know, she understands energy better than probably most of us. She started getting a whole bunch of people come to her who wanted to, who had brain injuries, who had all sorts of brain injuries. And finally she said, okay, well, then this is a message. She checked in. She said, I'll work with this guy. So she started to hook this guy up and she put him on the self-training program. Remember I showed you that white outline on the mind mirror? So that is the self-training program. You can train the awakened mind, meditation with flat beta, that means the silent meditation, or the evolved mind of non-duality, or even the gamma synchrony that you saw, that meditator developing that high frequency gamma. That is super conscious. You definitely want super conscious. New brain cells and memory centers, and the intellect balances the brain. And you saw that when that high gamma comes out, the lower state patterns optimize. So, so she starts working with this guy with the self-training program, which just works with audio cues. Basically, you listen, you hear music, and your brain says, "Oh, I should go this way," and so it just self-trains itself to optimize its own functionality. So this guy had a stroke, and it was a bad bleed, and so turn off my other computer's volume there. And so they did surgery, and it did stop the bleed, but he had still lost the entire left side of his body. He could not move anything. And Suzanne put him on the mind mirror, and there was no left brain, nothing there. So so she said, well, I know I'm supposed to do this. So she put him on the self-training program. She only did 8 sessions with him. The self-training program, he's just sitting there for 20 minutes at a time. And while she's sitting there, granted, she's sending him energy as a healer. And then she has him go home and at night listen to some of the Monroe Institute's binaural beats, which was certainly a big help. Because they're feeding frequencies into the left ear at, say, 444 and into the right ear at 440. The brain averages the difference, takes you down in consciousness to 4 hertz. But at the same time, it's balancing the brain and making the brain more coherent. By the 8th session, the guy had most of the control of his left side, and somebody had just thrown a ball across the room, and without thinking about it, he caught it. And he had a left brain, and he was moving toward the awakened mind pattern. No kidding.
Wow, that is amazing. And you telling me that story, I hadn't heard that story before. Karen Joy in Maryland, I'd love to get your brain hooked up, and you, Eric, with your magical healing and psychic abilities. Oh my goodness, can you imagine what we would be seeing? Gosh, well, we have some more questions I want to get to, and I also want to introduce Arne. So I'm going to throw, Willow, your question to both Arne and Judith. So I met Arne when I was at my training, my birthday gift training a few months ago. And Arne, as I mentioned, is from Germany. He's in California at the moment. He got his PhD in economics with a specialization in health econ and outcomes research. He's actually got 24 years of work experience in academia. He's worked with nonprofits. He's done various leadership positions, globally leading biotech and medical device corporations. So just to give you a sense of the left brain that's coming, he's worked in 34 different countries. But what is interesting about all of our nerdy passions with all things spiritual and energetic is that in 2016, Arne had a complete shift in his worldview, and it was due to some Kundalini events. And these events, which maybe he'll tell us about, led him on a 3-year in-depth journey that really led him to explore all of the capabilities of our human body to self-heal, and most importantly, to maximize the human opportunity, maximizing that capacity of human intelligence in all areas of life. He is a heart math trainer. He's done trainings and teachings with all sorts of people, many of whom you know, but I will stick to just that as our introduction. The thing that is interesting to me, or has been interesting getting to know Arne over the last couple of months, is his incredible ability as a healer. So he knows how to channel magical frequencies and help people get in touch with feeling unconditional love. And so what I will allow you to talk for a minute or two, Arne, and especially to also, because you're someone I trained with Judith, you've been now using the mind mirror protocols with the guided meditations that we learned, plus adding in your own magical fairy dust. And then we'll get to this question that Willow asked about HSPs. So I'm just curious if you can tell us a little bit about the background and why you're so passionate now about, teaming up to bring brainwaves into the world.
Yeah, thank you so much. As for having me here. And now speaking after Judith, I'm still fascinated by what I've heard, and I'm hearing this not the first time, but it still goes into my heart. Wonderful energy coming here from all you participants through this screen. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, as a PhD in economics a few years ago, all my lives, which I planned, was based on decision trees. I woke up in the night and was doing notes and planning out the life, and with certain ideas and planning. I was a better person, and I was a stressed better person, and my battery drained and drained and drained. And I was successful in my jobs, but my poor colleagues and my poor people in my teams, they got all my stress too. So there was something wrong. I felt it. My body was telling it to me. I got really sick, not noticing it, getting pharmaceuticals, feeling better. But inside, it was clearly telling me there needs to be change. I wasn't listening enough. And so the change came out of the nowhere with what people call Kundalini event, which is an increasing amount of energy inside, which we have as a capacity already there. And it all came as once in a body which was not really ready for this. So I had no other choice than thinking about out of the traditional healthcare system and trying to heal myself, find healers helping me. Just finding a label for what was really going on was extremely helpful. Short story, my completely life changed thereafter. And I noticed I'm a healer. I was not just working in a healing business 20 years. For 20 years, I was a little bit distracted because that's not the healing definition I have these days anymore. So I started to become a healer, work with that. I never felt like I want to admit that I'm a healer. And as part of this journey, I got to know about the mind mirror and the meditations at a time when I went through another life cycle crisis, which I still think is part of awakening, where a lot of things in your life have been destroyed, which are not serving you. And I got a deep vein thrombosis and a pulmonary embolism, which is really serious. And my whole right leg was blocked. And doctors said, we have never seen a leg blocked like that. They were really concerned, put me on all the medication which you need. And I was doing the healing circle meditation, which is part of the Awakened Mind Meditations by Inner Wise. I got incredibly deep, and I noticed I'm getting deep. And I noticed that during this meditation, 2 weeks after I got released from discharge from the hospital, something happened in my leg, and it was so amazing that I did know there are no blood clots in my leg and in my lung anymore, which is not possible according to the traditional healthcare system. And 3 weeks later, I went for a new ultrasound just to see if there's at least some little progress, if the medication works a little, or if we need to go to really invasive therapy. They did the ultrasound and they got extremely nervous during the ultrasound. They didn't understand anything what was going on. And a day later, when I saw the doctor, the technicians are not allowed to talk to you. They said, this is a miracle. There is no blood clot anymore. And I was just smiling. I was like, I know. So that's the power of being in a brainwave state where we are connected through delta or through our gamma with the universe. Miracles can happen. And I had experienced this before, and then I said, okay, I want to be a trainer. I want to know what this is about. I want to meet Judith. Went there and met Judith and Andrea. And I saw my brainwave pattern. I was like, oh my God, I am a healer. So I needed this confirmation to really admit this. And since my healing capabilities and admitting I'm a healer completely changed, and what Judith helped me to understand in our last discussion after 2 weeks being together, and when she knows my brainwaves inside out, what she said, Arne, you are this gamma person, and I discussed with her how exhausting I am often after healings, and I just did a little healing with a woodpecker, and Judith observed this, so she saw what I'm doing here, and she said, you have another option. You can heal through your heart. Try to do this. Try to heal directly from your heart rather than using this strong gamma. Since then, my healings are such a blessing for myself. When I work with clients, I'm calm, it's not draining me anymore, and the clients experience the love, and love heals. There's no question with that. So this is another experience with the brain wave measuring, understanding from where do we heal, because there are different ways. As a gamma person, I'm now in a practice phase, where I'm starting to see clients, and I'm attracting all these gamma people. You know, you attract who you are pretty much in your life. One of my clients, she had a gamma which is rare. These amplitudes which we've seen before with this example Judith showed us were about 10, 12, 15 microvolts. They have 70, 80, 90 microvolts. That's the amplitude here. That is draining. Yes, it can be beautiful, but if the gamma is not trained, it's extremely draining and exhausting for us. And we may not be functioning anymore well in this world. And after session 2, the second session I was hoping to see any reduction, and it really didn't do much. This client was not willing to let it go. So we introduced a third session where we didn't hook her up, but where I just did some healing with her, helping her to understand how safe it would be to let the gamma go and live from her heart, from theta and delta brainwaves. And we did just 1 hour healing session, and then went back into the NLY's protocol and going through the meditations, and she started to develop a beautiful brainwave pattern. Her life changed dramatically. And every time when we go through these sessions, after the sessions, we say, I knew it, but well, now I really know. So the knowing where they had is a feeling it's there. It's a subconscious knowing, right? But now we have subjective feelings getting up in an objective way. When we go through certain brainwave patterns, and you say, see, there's something at minute 8 which happened. And they say, when they see it, they remember exactly what it was. So really this amazing addition here to just doing meditations or brainwave entrainment is that you get objective information, and your brain reacts. When you see this, your whole body reacts to that and remembers things which come up. And the power of this, the feedback I'm getting from my clients and my own experience with this, it's so incredibly powerful to learn more about how our brain waves impact us. And there's an individual part of it. There's somewhat we know, what Judith has already explained. We know these brainwave patterns of awakened mind and evolved mind, and we can train them with biofeedback with this technology here. But there's always also a little individual part. So some are stronger in gamma, others in delta, and it's not better or worse. So we need to understand the individual strength. And this is the beauty about it. When we work as coaches with them or as trainers, that we can go into these discussions, incredible breakthroughs, incredible. I had a few, they went into theta delta, trauma came up, and a lot of tears and fears and little drama. So then in that case, it's good to be also a healer, just not understanding brainwave patterns, because within 2-3 minutes, because they were so aware of all what was going on, we shifted the whole energy, we did let it go, and it's a reorganization of your subconscious mind, a reprogramming of your subconscious mind, more powerful than it was with my old method for most people. So I'm deeply impressed and grateful for the work which Judith is doing, and Andrea and I are now doing. I believe this is a lot of future of medicine.
Yes.
Yeah. And it goes beyond the physical parts. I had this physical healing, but the spiritual healing, the emotional healing, it's amazing. So I'm proud to be a trainee of yours, Judith, and part of this community.
Awesome. I want to just jump in, and I'm going to allow you to also share, Judith, but I want to tie something that you just talked about, Arne, that we learned about when we were in Pennsylvania, and that is this gamma, these two different types of gamma. And it started to sound to me, and I've asked you this, Judith, when we were in our training, I asked about the highly sensitives, because there are some of us that in my early days, I'm thinking, is that, when we are completely overwhelmed, is that the gamma thing? But so I'm going to put a pin in that and come to Willow McIntosh. And I've told both Judith, and some of you have already met or seen Willow, but Willow is leading a movement, helping people who've been previously shamed or felt bad because they were highly sensitive people. He's helping them reframe their sensitivity into a superpower and reframe it as high sensory intelligence. And so we work with a lot of HSPs. I'm an HSP. As I described it to Arne, he said, I think I used to be an HSP, which is, again, I want to put a pin there, because can you ever not be an HSP? Okay, so Willow wrote this question. Judith, when you were talking about the alpha leading into theta and giving a sense of the real self or the essential self connection, would you say it's possible to track when people are having an experience of the authentic self during particular practices like these meditations? In other words, an experience of the authentic self as opposed to the false self. And I'm bringing that up for you as well, Arne, because I think as you talk about this sense of recognition that some of your clients are getting to this, well, yeah, I always knew, or like you had these inklings that you were a healer, but there's something that happens when we touch truth with a capital T. So I know I've mixed that up a bunch. Arne, I'll let you jump in, and Judith as well.
Yeah, so quickly thank you, Willow, for asking that question. And when I mentioned I used to be one, is I associated HSP with being disease, being not normal, and being overwhelmed by it. So what I managed to do is transform from the stress of being highly sensitive to now being highly sensitive without being stressed and getting into an opportunity of how to use it. I mean, every new moon cycle, everything what's happening, the last 3 earthquakes in California, which were very recently here in the region, they were not that strong, 3.2 to 4.7. The day before, my body was talking to me in a way that I knew something's happening. I didn't know that it's an earthquake. Now, in hindsight, I do know how an earthquake feels, right? So, but it didn't stress me anymore. It was initially, wow, what is this energy? How can I do it? So I learned how to manage the energy information which I'm getting in stressful rooms, in stressful environments, in woods. So I can stay extremely calm in a probably very healthy brainwave pattern, no matter what's going on with the energy around me. And that's completely new. It was draining me before. So that's what I meant when I said I don't have it anymore. It's the negative impact on my life from being highly sensitive. And yes, I do believe that with my own experience now, and I didn't know how I switched that, now with the intelligence which Judith is sharing, that we can learn a lot from staying very focused. So the example which we have, this mathematician, staying extremely focused, but it's really learning our innate body's messages towards us. What's going on, feeling the subtleness of the subtle energy. And once we understand that, we can start to manage and we can protect our auric field and we can radiate love rather than fear. And if I'm radiating love in my field, I'm getting way more protected from negative outside energies. So the feeling of this energy is more subtle. And if it's not, I tune in and trying to find out what is going on. It's more complex than that, but I'm giving the time here. I just want to give you some hints where this may be going, at least in my experience.
That's beautiful, Arne. It's so important for us to find the solution that you've just laid out. I'm an HSP, my daughter, my grandson, and I know many people who are, and also know, and to your credit, Willow, for doing this work. Thank goodness you're doing it, and I hope you can spread it through the whole world. These are our most, I don't want to say valued, but you can say certainly most creative, most sensitive, most progressive people at the avant-garde of society, and need help. I mean, I had a meditation group here last night, and 2 people of those 7 are HSPs, and they tend to isolate, to not go out. They can't stand to watch television or news, have a hard time in public spaces. Yeah, I see nods on that. And it's really hard to live that way. But Arne, you have just beautifully laid it out. Honestly, the solution, and the only solution that's going to work for each individual, is to go inside and find for themselves what is the solution. I mean, I hate to say it. Certainly, what Arne said is going to work, is to be centered in your heart, to have a lot of love and to strengthen your field that way. And to recognize that there's nothing to be afraid of, because you have an infinite number of solutions available to you. And so there are all those kinds of things that you can find out about yourself which help you to strengthen. That's certainly how I've done it. Believe me, I was a recluse when I was a writer, and I'm still kind of a recluse other than situations like this, because it's so hard to feel other people's energies. I mean, it can twist your heart. You can feel it pummel your energy field. I mean, but in the end, other than those generalized solutions, the best ones are going to come from that dive down into yourself to find what is going to power you up and what you need to clear out of yourself as well. What are you afraid of? What injury are you afraid of? Did something happen at some point to make you this way? Or have you always been an HSP? So, I won't say anything more about this, but more particularly to your exact question, yes, you can track when people are having an experience of the authentic self, because that's where you're going to see, as in the holographic experience of life itself, either you're going to be seeing the contact with the authentic self and the vast spaciousness that the person feels, which is going to be a high amplitude, awakened mind with a lot of theta and a lot of delta, and possibly flares of that evolved mind pattern. That's going to trigger that. If it's the ego, you're going to see beta flares, and you're going to see a constriction in theta, because beta is going to panic. Wait, you want an authentic self? No, I have a lot of reason for that. You yourself don't want me to have that. No, I've been programmed. I can't really do that. And theta will just collapse, and then alpha will collapse, and you'll see beta, and the person will go back to the hourglass pattern of the ordinary consciousness, which sadly is all too ordinary on our planet. But yeah, so the HSP, it's something I deal with on a daily basis, literally from moment to moment, because the more, Edgar Cayce said this, he said, the more you meditate, the more sensitive you become to influences of every kind. And that includes awareness of subtle energies, and as they flow inside yourself and around you. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, because that's what enables me to heal myself and to heal other people, It's what enables me to sense when somebody in the class, beyond visual or verbal perception, is having a difficulty. I mean, this is what we were made for. I think you said it yourself, Andrea, that we were made for this.
Mm.
We were made for optimization, which includes HSP. That's why I say I think it's the avant-garde, that people who have HSP, we're all headed toward it. And it's just part of our journey of increasing complexity and challenge. You know, you learn one thing and here comes, oh, okay, another challenge on the way. Even though high sense perception and vulnerability to negative energies is something we have to manage, it also means that we're going to feel the bliss. That's what I wouldn't trade for anything. Yeah. We get to feel the flow of light and consciousness and awareness and oneness with all that. So fantastic question, and great that you're doing this work, Willow.
Yeah, I think as Arne and you, Judith, and I team up, I'm betting that as we start doing research and asking other practitioners who have the mind mirror around the world, we can start looking at possibilities of what things impact the HSPs. So I want to pop over to Karen Joy and Eric Gerson, who are in Maryland, because they have some interesting things. But one of the things that you asked Karen about was the hardware, the software, and the EEG monitors. So Judith has been doing this for many years, and there are a few hundred people around the world who have the mind mirror. So you were asking about, could someone be hooked up, get their brainwaves, and then fed into that portal that Judith was talking about? We will get to a point very soon where that could happen, so that you wouldn't necessarily have to have, although I think you might nerd out with me and you might want to get trained too. Karen Joy is a retired nurse, so she's got that medical background. But yes, people could eventually be hooked up by, one of these people around the world who has the mind mirror and get their data fed into the portal so that it could be analyzed. And then, one of us in the fold would be able to do some analysis and such. But you had something to share, Eric?
Well, yeah, it kind of involves everything. But with Arne, I'm terrible with names. So can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the thing that struck me about what you said was when you talked about how you were doing energy work and it was exhausting you. And then you were told, to heal from your heart, and all of a sudden, you can just do it, and it's it's helping you, it's not exhausting you anymore. And I had somewhat of a similar experience where for years, whenever I did energy work, I would just bottom out. I was exhausted, and I wasn't using any specific technique other than just basically meditating over the client and feeling the vibration and attempting to let the universe energy come through me and into them, but I couldn't stop my own energy from being expended at the same time. And so one day I was working on my dogs, because that's my real love, is working on animals. And I just decided to just completely change what I was doing, and instead of trying to connect in that way, I just basically would put my hands on them and just say what I would say if I was trying to manifest something for myself, and not try to have that flow, but only more or less come from a point of view of I'm just asking the universe to do this thing for my animal. And two things have happened. Number one, I don't get exhausted at all, and the results are significantly better. She'll go from gimping because she has ACL and arthritis issues, and she has a bad day and she'll be gimping and can barely walk, and I'll work on her that night, and the next day she's running in the yard and she can't run. So I'd be really interested to in context of how it relates to the mirror, I would love to be hooked up to the mirror doing both things, the way that it's exhausting me and the way that it's working much better, and see what the difference is as far as brain waves are concerned. So that was my main point. And Judith, to your point, yeah, recluse. You don't know what she went through for 5 minutes to get me to come on screen. Okay?
Aw, I'm so glad you did.
I'm either all the way on, or I'm completely all the way off, and just leave me at the river alone for 24 hours. There's no in between with me. So I completely understand. I can relate to that. So that was.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here, because you would make a very easy hookup with your hairless head. And therefore a perfect candidate for something that the portal is going to allow us to do. Honestly, this software developer who just stumbled from the Monroe Institute into the Mind Mirror community circle has just been a godsend for us. He had this idea, and it's that we have way more self-trainers than practitioners, and they're spread. The self-trainers are literally all over the United States and Canada. And so you could go to a self-trainer, and the self-trainer would very easily be able to hook you up, and the portal will uptake the session, and the self-trainer will know something about brainwaves. So after the 2 minutes it takes to analyze the session, the self-trainer could certainly give you an overview. But if you wanted a really in-depth, say what if you brought one of the dogs with you and you did a healing session, and the self-trainer will know to put a marker in the session for when you're not healing and then when you are healing. And in that case, the software could probably handle it and give you the different segments. Some special directions would have to be made, but the self-trainer could put you in touch with a practitioner like Arne or Andrea, who could look at the data, that all the screens, the data analysis is done, and they could give you some real feedback. So this is all because of the portal and Andrew Tang's fantastic idea of networking self-trainers with practitioners to open up Mind Mirror potential sessions to other people. And it was really quite a brilliant idea. Plus we're thinking about having rental units for people who just want to work with the Mind Mirror for a while. Yeah, that would be fascinating to see, what would be the difference when you're healing and not. I think studies on healers are incredibly important, and I find myself constantly, in fact, if you go to the Institute for the Awakened Mind.com website, there's a page on it, a page link for research, and then a sub-page is Mind Mirror studies, and I've done some really interesting studies on healers, and the data analysis is right there. And I mean, the data analysis might be a little tedious for the general reader, but there's a little abstract that shows you the findings for each of those studies. I'm so looking forward to Andrea's plans for studying the brainwaves of HSP people, healers. I mean, just to continue to add to that page, to add to our database, and our understanding is phenomenal, especially with regard to these gamma waves. And may I say, Arne, you just have stunningly beautiful gamma brain waves. Andrea, nobody really comes here without having nice brain waves, but some people have really nice brain waves.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, I think everyone can tell why I've been nerding out over this, and I'm excited that Arne and Judith and I will be able to bring this to Glay. So some of the people here know about an event that we're holding in France called the Global Luminary Activation Experience, and quite possibly a taster session in June while Judith is over here in Europe. But Arne, you were about to say something.
Just very quickly to Eric. So I'm starting this self-research now when I hook my ups, and I'm been trained in many of those modalities, so 6 or 7 different ones, but I'm not working with them anymore, because after a while you do what just coming. But I'm going back right now and trying modality by modality. And there are intention healings by Lynn McTaggart. There's theta healing by Steibel and all of those. So I'm trying to see where are the differences, and they do show up in the system. It's really funny. I want to do this more often to know, is this consistent or not? But what was really draining me, I don't think, is sending the energy, is holding the space for the client during these sessions I'm having with them, and then training my brainwave to them so that they can get into trauma information, but mainly the space holding. And I'm now trying to find out how I do the space holding without I'm getting really in a nervous situation. I thought I'm calm, it feels blissful for me, but my brainwaves gives me some different information from time to time. It's all early, so there may be other influences right now, but I hope I'm getting much more sessions in that. Right now I'm busy with clients and I'm not very good with the self-hookup yet. I need to think about a new haircut for that. But having said this, it's incredible what the mind mirror can show, and I'm sure I'm using at most 50% of the capability right now. So I'm going back for 2 more weeks trainings in February. Looking so much forward to that, Judith.
So are there other questions? Are any of you, I'm assuming yes to Karen and Eric, anyone else excited and inspired to, one, maybe get hooked up so that we can see what's going on in your brain? Sarah, you had mentioned wondering about the mind mirror and these meditations for burnout. So I'd love for Judith to comment on that, because we, of course, at Innate Vitality, my other company, we focus a lot on resilience and helping people recover from burnout. But exciting stuff. If you have other questions, please pop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll take some final questions before we wrap up.
Do you want me to say something about burnout?
Yes.
So, the first thing I would look at with burnout would be the physiology meters, the GSR, and the heart rate sensor. The GSR, very often what you see is that people have moved into a fixed parasympathetic tone, meaning that they have gotten so wound up for so long that they just collapse. And you see this in the tiredness, and it actually shows up on the GSR. And so the first thing you do is check the heart rate, make sure the heart rate's not high. Of course, you'd want to check the EEG too. But for the EEG, I would simply have people go in and do some inner child work, soothe and love themselves and forgive themselves, because certainly guilt is going to come in with burnout. Oh, I couldn't do it, I failed, or anger at other people. So a lot of awakened mind meditations. And by the way, I'm recording all of the unpublished meditations of Max Cade and Anna Wise, as well as some of my own, and they're all going to be in the portal and for sale up on the, I don't know where all, the Amazon probably, and certainly on the portal website. And all of these meditations, each one has a different focus. And so there's one that's personal transformation focus. And so you would deal with the part that has the burnout, and you would dialogue with that burned out part of yourself, and invariably find out that that part is protecting you from some kind of crash. And then through the dialogue, you would come to recognize and realize in this very Gestalt method, what needs to happen next, what needs to happen. Does the burnout need to be transformed, or is there some different sort of approach that the subconscious would use to heal the situation? So certainly EEG, but you would definitely want to get that physiology back in line with the EEG, and it's probably out of alignment with the EEG. Probably got a mind-body split, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love for you to chime in a little bit, Judith, about your experience recently with Dawson Church out in San Diego. he, for the Americans, you probably know of him already. He's big in the EFT tapping, because Mai just posted a question asking, well, saying she'd love to get hooked up to see what happens to her as she's doing chakra or shadow tapping, which is EFT, or when she's doing the releasing method that the Sedona Method teaches. But talk to us about what you saw with EFT tapping. For those of you that don't know it, you know, you're tapping and sometimes reciting affirmations. What did you see on the mind mirror there?
Yeah, so you're reprogramming the meridians and thus the thought patterns, the energy flows in the body. I've seen some phenomenal things. I really didn't expect it. There is a couple out in California who have been working with Dawson Church, the EFT guru, who's written some really stunning books, Mind to Matter. Right now I'm proofing his new one called Bliss Brain. I was going to show you his brainwaves, but I don't have direct permission, so I won't. He has got a bliss brain with a circular evolved mind pattern. He certainly would not mind my saying that. It's hard for us to get good readings while the tapping is going on, unless you're tapping very lightly, because you don't want to disturb the electrodes. But there is on the Mind Mirror Studies research page that I just referred to on the website, a study of 8 people at the Open Center in New York City a couple of years ago. And we did opening and closing baselines. There was another Mind Mirror practitioner. We each were monitoring 4 people. And of those 8 people, 6 of them came out with more eyes open, awakened mind patterns through the tapping, which is phenomenal to happen in just 2 days, because this is the purview of the yogi and the swami, to have an eyes open alpha, to be that relaxed in consciousness. And so it's definitely efficacious. There's absolutely no question about it. I just came back from San Diego. Dawson had a life vision retreat at this wonderful Rancho Bernardo hotel, and made it into a retreat center. We were up at 6:30 a.m. every morning, meditating, plugging into our guides. Now, this was really to program your whole life. But there was a ton of tapping going on there. And I even did some myself, and I already knew about it. It definitely works, there's no question. And the Mind Mirror most assuredly will tell you if you just look at that study. In fact, we published a study that Open Center. It's not just on the Institute for the Awakened Mind.com website, but it's also in the Energy Psychology Journal. We published a formal study on it that was peer reviewed, and these were very clear-cut conclusions, except for one thing, which I haven't mentioned this to Dawson, but I will. One part of the statistical evaluation said that, well, there were some outliers, and so we weren't going to consider the outliers, but the outliers were all the evolved mind patterns that showed up when they were doing Dawson's famous eco meditation. What he just did was patch together a bunch of different segments from other people's realization of what works. And he has a focus on, well, tap first to clear and set an intention for openness, and then focus on your heart, then the heart math, care, love thing. And then he has you, in the eco meditation, not the ones we did in San Diego, but the eco meditation, he has you send love and caring and compassionate energy to yourself and then to others. Well, of course, that's going to create evolved mind patterns. But the people the scientists who worked on the studies called those the outliers. No, those are not the outliers. What they found on the evolved mind pattern showing up is one of the effects of the most important effect, the unvarying effect of connecting with energy and moving energy in yourself and others, and that is the evolution of consciousness. And EFT will certainly generate awakened mind and evolved mind patterns. It's fantastic stuff, really is, definitely works. I don't know what the Sedona Method is. I wonder what that is. So she releases with the Sedona Method.
I'm unmuted. Yeah.
Yes.
So the Sedona Method is actually called the art of letting go. So it's like you train yourself to let go of the wanting control or the wanting to be controlled. It's like small mini meditations, seconds, and you can do it awakened. When you have trained it a bit, you can sit to a meeting and release the wanting approval. For example, a lot of people say you need to let go of control, but it's not the control, it's the wanting control. So when you learn to let go of the energies, the wanting energy, you are in control. And it's really beautiful, very gentle tool. It's from Arizona. He's called Lester Levinson, the guy who invented it. And Hale Dworskin is bringing it out
that
to
would
the
be
world.
some really that would be some really deep work to let go of the impulse as well as the behavior.
So you also let go of both sides. If you're attached, it's like attachment and aversions, you let go of both. So there's a lot of welcoming and allowing, and I'm good at rebelling that. So it would be interesting to see what happens when you do the sessions and you don't want to let go, and so these different states, and so also what happens when you actually release a trauma, because first it could be very, very emotional and very stressful. So I just think this is brilliant. I'm really, really curious about testing it. Be a guinea pig.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to wear a rubber band on my wrist every time I caught myself trying to control something. This could be real injury. You know, years ago in the U.S., I think it was Vice President Al Gore came up with this idea that wear a rubber band every time you catch yourself complaining. Well, that was painful enough. Controlling, I don't know. You can be awake and still have, bad habits. I will say that.
Yeah.
It's constant mastery. And so what you're really saying is that work is awakened mind work.
Yeah. It really is. If you do the work.
Right.
Yeah. But it's our natural ability to let go. As kids, we do it easily. So we just have to relearn it. What?
Yeah.
Sorry?
As they say, it works if you work it.
Yes.
Yes.
Follow the simple steps.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in this evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are in the world. I hope this has been insightful and helpful and given you a sense of the possibility that lies within your control. You can learn to control your brain waves and really get into a state of deep meditation for healing, creativity, insight. You can get to these expanded states of consciousness, like the awakened mind and the evolved mind. And doing it with this neurofeedback is going to give you that sense of that knowing that Arne was talking about, that people can start to feel and sense and know. Either, we teach about landmarks. They can either know what mentally was going on, what visually was going on, what was going on kinesthetically, so that they can reproduce. And that's really what we're aiming for. We're not aiming for all of you to be hooked up to an EEG constantly. It's as Judith said, it's like to get trained in these states of consciousness so that you can move out into the world eyes wide open and still be grounded and still be in tune with the healing powers that you need, or the creativity or intuition that you need. So I hope that this has been interesting to you. We will definitely be sharing with you all the replay so you can watch it again. And for those that are watching on the replay, isn't this cool? You can join us for workshops. Just stay tuned for dates. We're looking at a couple of dates here in 2020, so you can get hooked up and you can start learning. And of course, check out Judith's books. Just Google Judith Pennington or go to Amazon. You can also look at Anna Weiss's book and see Maxwell Cade. Amazon Music has High Performance Mind. So many of the meditations that Arne and I were talking about, you can listen to. You can buy the CD, you know how it is back in the day. You can just listen through Amazon Music, you know, purchase it, and then take yourself through these meditations. Even without being hooked up, you can start training. But I definitely look forward to seeing your brainwaves, especially with all the various healers and psychics that we have in this community. So many thanks to you, Judith and Arne. If anyone has any last little comments, otherwise, I just thank you all for being here and being so generous with your time.
Thank you for being so generous with your time and your heart and spirit. And thank you, all you beautiful souls. Someone put something in there, said, thank you, beautiful souls. And I want to just echo that. It's such a joy to be around like-minded spirits. Yeah, always. Thank you for your questions, your comments, and your beautiful smiles.
Indeed.
Also, thanks from myself to Andrea for inviting me. That was my first invitation to Zoom or any other event like this. So I'm really honored in this distinguished community of souls here and wisdom from all of you. So it was a big, big pleasure. I felt healings from you. So thank you for sharing those with me.
Yes, we do have a very powerful community. So thank you all for being here. We will send out the replay so that you can watch it. You can share it with other people who might be curious about this, and stay tuned for the next one. All right. Much love and gratitude to you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.